Hi guys, hope wherever you are and whatever you've been doing, you've had a super sensational day. I've got a question for you. Did you know that in Australia that there are over 300 languages spoken in the home environment? It's just incredible. Now, Australia, being one of the most diverse and multicultural countries in the world, really does present a fantastic opportunity for children to learn and practice another language. But a lot of parents actually believe that a second language could actually be detrimental to their children's learning. So tonight we are thrilled to be speaking with Freeda Thong, Speech Pathologist from YouThrive Services in Springfield, on this very topic. Now, Freeda is a certified speech pathologist and practicing member and Queensland branch representative member of Speech Pathology Australia. And she has a fond interest in speech, sound disorders, early language and learning difficulties in children. How are you doing, Freeda?
I'm really well tonight. How are you going, Rachel?
Yeah, I'm super excited to be chatting with you. And this is a really interesting concept, I guess, to be able to combine speech pathology therapies and bilingualism. So just wanted to clarify at the get, I guess, is there any connection between the two? Or is this just that you're a speech pathologist who is just passionate about bilingualism?
I guess there's a little bit of both. So I am a speech pathologist and I am very passionate about bilingualism. I guess on the base, the first thing that made me passionate about bilingualism is that I'm bilingual myself. And when I became a speech pathologist, I started seeing a lot of children for different language disorders, lots of different language delays, and started noticing a lot of my children that were coming in were also bilingual. And that's what really, I guess, sparked my interest and where that overlap of bilingualism and speech pathology really meshes. Yeah.
It's something that is really close to my heart. I've been brought up with an Italian family. However, we never spoke it at home, and my brother and myself have both sort of lived our life wanting to be able to speak Italian at a minimum. And your article, which we're going to speak about in a moment, really does sort of highlight all of the I guess, the benefits in children being bilingual and all of the benefits that it brings, on a neural development perspective, and then also to their life. So this is something that I think is really important, especially as we mentioned at the start, having the opportunity to be able to speak so many languages, because in Australia we've got, over 300 spoken, so it's unbelievable. So on that, we published your article titled Why Bilingualism Matters. For someone who hasn't read the article, could you give us a little bit of an overview of what it's about and what inspired you to write it?
Absolutely. I guess really it's a bit of a summary on some of the research that I've read and some of the journal articles and anecdotal evidence, and I guess really just different information that I have been able to read and really mesh into one spot for people who might be bilingual and want to know a little bit more about the benefits of bilingualism, or even parents, I guess, who are kind of stuck in the mindset on whether they should really raise their children in a bilingual household or not. But yes, it really just goes through what bilingualism really is and what literature is saying about bilingualism. And there's a lot of positive stuff out there. So I just really wanted to put it to one place, and thank you guys for publishing it.
Of course. And can you tell us a little bit why, like, families and parents are thinking that is detrimental to a child to be able to learn two languages?
A lot of the time I get a lot of parents who come in and believe that by, I guess, having two or even sometimes three languages in one household, that it's going to confuse their children too much. Mm-hmm. That, once they're in their school environment, they're speaking English, but when they come home, they're speaking X language, and then perhaps mum is speaking one language and then dad speaking another language, and they think that often more than not, they think that it's going to just really confuse them and that it's going to delay their development. Rather than being super excelled in English, they're mediocre in all these other languages. But it's not always the case that they're mediocre. It's sometimes that one language might be a little bit slower than the other, but there's an age that at one point it all catches up, is what literature is telling us.
Yeah. It's I want to just pull out some of the conversational points from the article before we get stuck into your three key I can't even talk, 3 key questions, because there's some really interesting stuff in this article. And you mentioned that studies have shown that it does not disadvantage children to be learning more than one language, and in particular that they sort of soak up all of that knowledge, in particular before the age of 8. So was that your scenario, that you actually learnt a lot of your second language before that age?
I actually remember learning my second language. So I learned English. I started learning English when I was 4, and I would say I was completely proficient at both English and my first language by age of, say, 6 or 7. So yeah, I feel like that's pretty true.
Yeah. And you mentioned also in the article that children are able to tell the difference between 2 separate languages by the age of 5, which is really quite interesting as well.
Absolutely, very, very interesting. And I loved reading some of the papers about this that explains that, if they're in a household, say with 2 different parents, 2 different languages, they can speak in their secret language with mum and then code change into that second language with dad, and then still differentiate with brother or sister their own English, communication as well. So yeah, by the age of 5, that's what literature is telling us, and very interesting indeed.
Yeah. And I'm almost quite envious that the children, or anyone that has the ability to be able to do that. I can't even speak English properly, let alone 2 languages. So, what a gift to be able to have. And the last point I just wanted to sort of bring out from the article before we ask the questions, that you mentioned from 2011 to 2016 that there was a 4% decrease of bilingual households, and the stats around that suggest that the trend will actually continue. So, saying that we are really spoilt for choices, that there are so many languages spoken at home, but that yet there's so few of us actually making the effort to learn that second language. Can you just maybe just give us your opinion? Why do you think there's this continual decrease of people learning or making the effort to learn a second language?
I think sometimes it might not even be learning a second language, but sometimes keeping the first language, or keeping a native language that might be in a household. So I guess Australia itself, we're so multicultural, and the reality is a lot of the people that are in Australia, we've come from somewhere. So my parents alone have come from Cambodia, and I know a lot of people who do have that second language and have now gone on to have families. And sometimes what's happening is, as the generations kind of continue, we're losing that first native language from wherever it is that these families have come from, as we're getting immersed into our Australian English culture, and kind of, I guess, losing our language as we're losing that culture as well. And so I guess what I'd really love to urge is, let's keep those languages going. There's 300 of them and we're losing them. So
yeah. And do you think it's also just the fact that, I'd hate to bring it up, but technology as well, like, a lot of people now that go overseas will, and I've done it myself, having been in Japan, and it was quite difficult to learn that language. We actually had a translator on our phone and those types of things. So technology is actually stopping us from and preventing us from making the effort to learn a second language, especially when we're traveling. I don't know, what are your thoughts about that?
I think it could be. I think, it's easier to download an app and trust it and rely on that app to communicate, rather than spending, say, 3 months prior to learn that language of that country that we're about to go in. Even if it is, say, 20, 50 words that might be functional in a country, it would still be nice to have, a little bit of a different, diverse language in your vocab. But yeah, I think the really big thing is that we're losing that home language for people who are from different cultures. Yeah.
Well, we've got these 3 key questions, so let's get stuck straight into them. So question number 1, what is bilingualism?
Bilingualism is really being fluent and understanding more than one language.
Yeah. All right, cool. Yeah. And question number 2, can learning a second language be harmful to a child's learning?
Well, really the literature is saying no. I have searched for literature that is saying, looking for, the risks and dangers of teaching a child a second, third, fourth language, but I really can't find it. So there's lots of research that says that learning a second or third language is actually quite good and beneficial for a child's learning, especially for, I guess, their brain development as well. So yeah, there's lots and lots of benefits to it.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of cultures have like Sunday school, Greek school on a Sunday, and those types of things where they promote and they teach, you know, different languages and that sort of stuff as well. And once again, I think it's an incredible gift to be able to have the, you know, the ability to be able to think and speak in another language for lots
Absolutely.
which is a perfect segue into question number 3, and we get to speak about some really exciting stuff you've got in the article. So what are the benefits of bilingualism? You've got 7 of them in your article, so I'd love to be able to sort of chat through some of those.
Yeah, sure. I guess we'll just go straight from top to bottom.
Yep.
So the first one that I have there is that we're able to communicate and more effectively and efficiently as well. So say if you're in an environment where there are other people that speak the same language or that you do, or speak both or 3 of the same languages that you do, naturally as humans, how we communicate is we try to find the easiest and the laziest way to say something. Which is just truth. And if, I guess, we're speaking in multiple languages, you can, rather than speaking in one language and you might say something in 10 words, if you're mixing 3 languages, you might find an easier way to say something in as little as 3 words, for example. So that, I guess speaking more efficiently, having more vocabulary in your head as well, from knowing different, I guess, multiple languages. Another thing is, I guess, really feeling a sense of belongingness to a culture even. I guess sometimes when you might be able to speak with your grandma, say if, Rach, if you were able to speak with, you know, elderly family Italian, in some sense, would that make you feel, I guess, more connected in some capacity? I know for me it would. Yeah.
The challenging part in that, in a lot of languages, you've got dialects as well. So you'll speak, you know, the native overall, you know, Italian, but then of course there's countless different dialects in different villages and parts of Italy as well, or any other language. So, but you know, and that in its sense is almost learning a different language again, because you've got the native and then you've got the dialect. But 100%, you know, it would increase your ability to have that sense of belonging. 100%.
Yeah, and even with different dialects, I know my first language was Cambodian, but I'm not amazing at it because I have been immersed and speak English so much. But I went to Cambodia once, and being able to speak the language did make me feel a little bit more, I guess, part of the culture.
Yep.
And as though I did belong to the place. So yeah. Another thing that I guess the largest thing that I've taken away from a lot of the research that I've read into, and something that has been, I guess, the greatest thing that I've been able to read and have loved learning about bilingualism, is that there's actually a lot of protective mechanisms neurologically. So something that I read was that it actually helps to delay later age onset dementia. And that's, it's pretty crazy. And it's through a term that they call in literature cognitive reserve. So because there are more things that are, I guess there's more activation happening in the brain, it's said that it's supposed to encourage increase of memory, increase of executive control, increase of decoding and encoding and task switching. So that's a really big one that I think is a massive benefit to bilingualism. Protecting our brain.
100%. That's just, for any reason, I think I'm going to start learning it now. So it's only now, but that's a really valid point. And as you said, there's it's a nice little chunky answer that you've got in the article, so that's worthwhile sort of anyone clicking on the link at the bottom of this introduction paragraph to have a read of the article and read up a little bit more on that one. So what's the next one?
Okay, so with bilingualism, because I guess with that, going a little bit back to the activation of the brain as well, it helps with fluidity of learning a third or fourth or fifth language. And it helps to pick up sounds as well. So if you're exposed to more than just English, you're hearing lots of other different sounds and you're practicing lots of different sounds, it's easier then to make similar sounds or more sounds as a third or fourth language, because you'd have more shared sounds.
Yeah.
And that's just with exposure to different tongue movements and lip movements and different sounds that you're hearing through, a second language.
Yeah. And the brain's more supple and that sort of stuff as well, or how does that work at a cognitive level? It's just the fact that we're using the brain more and it's just more active and it's sort of more fit per se, would you say?
That's it. Yeah, literature says that it's because of the brain activation and there's more, more firing on in the brain there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, what's the next one?
It's awesome. Next one. Okay. So this one, it's something that I believe. And literature also does say this. There are stats around this. With people who do have a second or third language, it's easier for them to get jobs.
Yes.
So in terms of career prospects, especially being in Australia, and where I guess there are so many people who come here on holidays alone, having that second or third language makes us really competitive.
Yes.
To be able to speak to people who are coming here on holidays, especially in those seasons where I'm lost for words right now. I'm lost for the word that I'm looking for when people come here for holidays.
Yeah. Well, on this point, it's really interesting. I was talking to a business a couple of days ago about, the baby expos that we have all around Australia, and they were talking about the fact that given that we have a high Asian population in Australia, that they are looking at putting Mandarin-speaking people working for their businesses on the stands at the expos, which is going to open opportunities, obviously, for increased amount of custom and families to be able to buy their products and services. So, and this is just one example out of countless industries and that sort of stuff as well. But 100%, opening up the opportunity for career opportunities here and abroad. It's one of those things, and like anything, the world's getting more competitive in all aspects. So I think any opportunities for children that are going to help them in their career in the modern workforce is something that we should definitely consider. Invest energy in the education in the adolescence, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess there's a lot of trade happening amongst the countries as well, and having, a second, third language that might be shared with a country. Say if you're running a business, or if you're working in a business that does do a bit of trading or does communicate across the seas, then that really lends itself as a skill as well.
Yes, 100%. All right, next point.
Next point, okay. Second last point here is that it gives an academic advantage. So for children who are learning a second or third language, as we're talking about, that neural development and lots of activation going on in the brain there, lots of research is saying that is very true, but also that it helps build the middle of the brain. So the part of the brain that really helps children cope with different things like attention and task maintenance, even regulating their emotions. There's research out there that's saying that having a second or third language really helps with that. So I think that's definitely a benefit for. I'm sorry?
Do you know why that is?
Look, I actually don't really know, to be completely honest with you, why that happens. And I think that just lends itself for space for more research to be done about bilingualism and how the brain really develops for children who are bilingual. So let's really encourage people to be bilingual so we can do more research in those areas, because as these languages disappear, there's not going to be much research around it anymore.
Yeah, 100%. And the final point.
Last point there is ease of travel. So I guess that kind of goes and ties hand in hand with our point about career prospects. Not only learning that different second language can help with, I guess, those career prospects and traveling for trade and that sort of thing, but really just traveling leisurely as well. So having, I guess, a language that is shared across different countries. So something like Mandarin or something like Spanish, those ones that are really quite highly used across different countries, they're really beneficial because you can go and travel anywhere really and have a second or third language that might be shared with that country. Yeah, so those, I guess, are really just 7 surface points, but I would imagine there are so many more points that I'd be able to squeeze into this. But I guess in terms of having that research article, these were just the 7 main ones that I really wanted to share.
Yeah. So you've been really insightful tonight and just given us lots to think about. So as you're in your role as a speech pathologist, as you mentioned at the start of the chat, that you've actually had, you know, a lot of families come into this service as well. What messages would you have, final messages would you have for parents out there who are maybe considering, you know, investing the time and energy resources into having their child learn a second language, and you know, what advice do you have as to why they should, from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the main thing from my perspective, and I've said it a couple of times tonight, is really let's keep those second, third languages going. And I think if you are in a household and you yourself are a parent and you speak a different language, don't worry about that. Don't worry about stopping yourself from speaking that second language. Really encourage, I guess, that second language with your child. And I think really foster that sort of second culture in your home as well. And don't be afraid to use that second language, because literature is out there and it says that there is no problem with having that second language there, and it's not going to be detrimental to their learning. And I guess if anyone is wanting a second opinion or wanting to look more into the literature, there's lots of literature out there, but there's also lots of speech pathologists out there that, you know, who work in language, and you can tap on their doors and ask them for a second opinion as well.
Yeah. So if mums and dads and parents have got any questions for you and or want to reach out to you for any other expert, you know, opinion and advice, whereabouts can they find you?
Yeah, so I am easily accessible through our website. So it's just www.youthrive.com.au. And so I'm working as a speech pathologist at Springfield, as you said. And that it's an easy phone call as well if anybody is wanting to ring. We have speech pathologists here, but we also got OTs and psychs as well. So they also lend lots of information to, I guess, children who are working, who are bilingual as well, and they work amongst children who have developmental disorders and language delays also.
All right, cool. So before we go, can you just give us and teach us one word in Cambodian before we go to actually learn at least something?
Okay.
It's easy.
Something functional. Hello?
Yes.
Okay, is sauce nay.
Sauce may.
Sauce nay.
Oh, sauce with an N. Sauce nay?
No, sauce nay. So if I were to spell it, it would be like SOUR, can I accept SOUR, and then SDAY.
Oh, sauce day.
Yes.
Sauce day. Okay.
Oh, you say it so well, Rach.
Okay, well, at least I've learned one word tonight. Sauce day. Thank you.
That's it.
I've really
Thank you for having me, Rach.
Tonight, and hopefully we'll be able to chat about something else really, really soon. Take care.
Thanks, Rach. See you.
Bye.
Bye.